Welcome to Music Forever, a podcast by the New Horizons International Music Association. I am Irene Cohen. Nina Andersen is an accomplished musician, educator, and performer in the larger Maine area in the United States. She is the founder and music director of the Southern Maine New Horizons band that is based in Portland, Maine. Nina and I met in August 2023 at the New England Adult Music Camp. Okay, well, here we are at Snow Pond, New England Adult Music Camp, and I'm talking to Nina Andersen today, who is also the camp director for this camp. Hello, Nina. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Irene. Thank you.
So, tell us a little bit about your history, your music history. Where did it all start?
Well, I started like a lot of people start with an instrument in grade school. I think sixth grade probably, when they offered playing an instrument in a band. And I, for some reason that I don't remember, picked the clarinet and started playing in the school band. And that's where I sort of started. And I went right through high school. And my first band director was William Moulton from Vermont. And I went to school in Vermont. We had a fantastic program. We were at a very sort of small consolidated music school in the northeast corner of Vermont. So it was a lot of small towns that all had one high school, but they had the most fabulous music program. We had full band, full orchestra. We did like 2 musicals with a full pit every year.
Wow.
It was fantastic. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of support and a lot of different experiences during that time. So that's where I got my start.
Right.
And it turned out that I was good at it.
Yes.
And so my parents supported getting me private lessons, and I played in Allstate, I played in All New England, and just really, it sort of was the focus of my life during my high school years, for sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Was there music in the home? Did your parents play anything?
Not at that time. My father had played the saxophone when he was a high school and in college, but nobody played an instrument. And then my mother, on my mother's side of the family, she's from Oslo, Norway, she had some uncles who were professional musicians in the Oslo Philharmonic.
Okay.
So there was some of that.
Yes.
But not happening in my home at the time that I was growing up.
But there may have been some DNA.
I'm thinking perhaps, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Well, I mean, the trajectory at that point was that I was going to go to school to study music. And so my band director at the time had recommended Mankato State University in Minnesota. And I went to school there and was there for a year. And then it's not an uncommon story that, other opportunities presented themselves, and I left and went out west to Seattle, Washington, and then to Alaska, and put the music away for almost 20 years.
So all the way from the east to the west?
All the way from the east to the west, and as about far west as you can go, was because I was out on the Alaska Peninsula in Alaska, out towards the Aleutian Islands. So I called my mother, and she was like, where are you going to end up next? I was there for 11 years. I mean, in that remote part of Alaska in particular, music was that type of music that I had developed in high school was not really part of the culture there, and there weren't opportunities. And I got married young and had some children, and that was sort of the focus of my life at that point. So it just wasn't a play sport. But I had brought my clarinet. My clarinet has traveled with me throughout all of these changes, so I still had it.
Then at some point in time, you decided, I want to get back into music.
I decided with my husband at the time and our children to come back to the East Coast. And my father was here in the East Coast. He was in Maine, actually. And so that was sort of what brought me back to Maine specifically. And so we came here in 1987. And then he had taken up his instrument, his saxophone, again in his mid-50s.
Wow.
He had not played it since college.
Yes.
So he was sort of that model of, I put it away and then here I am. I'm sort of coming out of my professional life. I'm looking for something else to do, and I think I want to take up music again. And he became quite serious about it. He took private lessons for years. He played in a number of groups, both concert band and jazz bands, and it became sort of the focus of his life. So he was doing that, and he was connected to the community band community in Maine. So I started exploring that. I think within 3 years of moving to Maine, I joined a community band, started playing my clarinet again. And then I think maybe 5 years after that, I decided I wanted to go back to school to finish the degree that I had started after high school. I went to the University of Southern Maine in Gorham. I ended up doing a double major because I couldn't make up my mind about, do I want to do music education? Do I want to do performance? I have back and forth. And finally, I had almost the right amount of credits for both. So I just did finish. So I had a degree in clarinet performance and a degree in music education with an instrumental focus.
Right.
And when I was in school, one of the classes we were required to take was instrumental conducting. the teacher was Dr. Peter Martin. And when I started with that program, he became my mentor. And I found that I just had a natural affinity for the conducting, and I loved it. And he saw that, and he really nurtured that with me and encouraged me. And then the band that my dad was playing in, which was the Italian Heritage Band at that point in time, was going through a transition around conductors. And so I talked with Peter Martin. I said, should I apply? And he said, why not? Yeah. So I did, and I was hired as their associate. Those community musicians, that's where my passion was. That's where I felt that was my place, to work with folks who just loved making music, and not necessarily at a professional level, but at whatever level they could.
And what is it about conducting that you thought, this is what I want to do?
Leonard Bernstein has always been someone that I admired. Just the idea of sort of being able to work with a group of people and be sort of in that position of creating sound, a picture of sound with others, and to find the way to be expressive around that was very appealing.
It is a leadership role.
Absolutely.
It's you're not just the educator, you're the leader. I find as a player, you want to please your conductor. You always want to make sure that, you make them happy. So here you were 20 years with one community band, and then tell us more about what happened after that.
So I was at a point with the group where it felt like it was time for a change for a variety of reasons. And there was one member of the group, Lauren Peters, who was a friend of mine, and he had heard of the New Horizons organization. And he also had heard of the New England Adult Music Camp that I think had just started around that time. I think we started here in 2013. I think he thought I would be a good fit for that. And so he started sort of encouraging me to explore that. And when I left that group in 2016, I think the year before I left, I ended up meeting Diane Muffett. We somehow got connected to do a radio show with Maine Public Radio Call-In. They interview different guests about different topics all the time. So the two of us were invited to be there and to just talk about community music making with wind bands. And so I met her, and we ended up talking a lot, and she told me about this camp. And I was like, oh, that just sounds like right up my alley.
Yes.
So I came in 2016 as a camper to be here while she was the director, and spent the week here as a camper like you all are doing, and just had so much fun. And then at the end of that week, Diane announced that she was stepping down. And so I was already exploring, and I think actually was planning at that point to start my own New Horizons group in Maine, in the greater Portland area. And then when she announced her resignation, I was talking to Patty Hurley, the trumpet specialist, and she and I had developed a rapport during the week, and I told her about my background. She said, you would be such a good fit for this program.
Yes.
And so I approached John Wigan, who runs the Snow Pond organization up here, and said, I'd really like to be considered for the job.
Wow.
They hired me. And so within that first year, from the time the 2016 Diane stepped down, I began to work on taking this over, and I started my own New Horizons group in Portland. And I started working with New Horizons, the organization, the national organization, to begin to get the tools and the resources that they provided.
Yes.
I think I got a mentor who sort of was my contact person with the organization to sort of help me know how do I do this?
Yes.
And some of they had resources at that time that I could use to sort of help me know how to structure it.
So how did you find players for your band?
And so I think it was mostly word of mouth at first initial, and some people that I knew. And so we had a core group of 7, had our first semester in the fall, and played a little concert. I still remember it, and I have, I think, 3 founding members in the band now that remember it well, too. It was a little shaky.
Yes.
But, that's how we got started.
Well, that's a huge change from being a conductor of a well-established community
with
band.
70 people.
Yes, and then go to a little band of possibly beginner or intermediate players who
hadn't played for 50, 60 years or never played at all. And it was
that's
a big
very
change.
brave of you.
Thank you.
And what sort of challenges did you face? Did you ever think, why am I doing this?
Yeah, there were many times where, because it is, and I appreciate you acknowledging or noticing that there is a big difference from what I had been doing, where, community band, a lot of these New Horizon groups, they kind of look the same, but they function and they feel they're very different, especially as the conductor and the one sort of facilitating the process. Community band, you show up and you facilitate the music selection, you prepare for rehearsals and stuff, and then you just conduct a rehearsal.
Yes.
New Horizons, there's so much else more to it than that. And, and I sort of knew that, but then actually doing it, and you're often dealing with smaller groups, You don't have the ideal instrumentation.
Yes.
You're dealing with lots of different levels of learning, trying to support that. And so, there's a lot more effort involved, I think.
A totally different challenge.
Yeah.
And you really have to want to do that and be that type of an educator. How do you deal with a growing band and people playing at different levels?
The goal is to sort of help people grow musically, and often that may result in them going off and finding something else that they're ready for that's at a different level.
Yeah.
And then you have to let them go.
Yes.
So
yes.
That's not always easy, especially if you have a small group. A little bigger. We're now up to about, we range between 20 and 25 of us.
Oh, that's a great group.
Yeah. So it's a nice group with pretty decent instrumentation. But we found that we were starting to really bump up against people who were not ready for that sort of level and people who were ready to go to that level. So we created a beginner band.
Excellent.
And we've been doing that for, I think this will be our second full year doing that.
Right.
And that's been great because then you can spend more time on the educational piece, slower, people question and answer kind of stuff. And that works well. I mean, I think why Diane Muffet was such a great fit for this camp and her New Horizons group, she's a middle school band teacher.
Yes.
That's her background. She's spent decades doing that.
Yes.
I don't have all that experience. I did public school for a little while and I have that education, but you really need the pedagogy almost for every single instrument to be able to do that. And that's not easy to develop.
It is not easy. And sort of that sense of sort of starting at the base of things.
Right.
Some people just have that, probably because of their background like you're describing. Nina, you already mentioned the New Horizons International Music Association that you approached to get some ideas as to how to start up a band, the support that you could get. Tell us a little bit about how you then got connected with Nima even further.
So I just saw an email came through. It's like, Nima's looking for a treasurer. And my day job is I have my own business that I do nonprofit bookkeeping for small nonprofit organizations.
Yes.
And I thought, this sounds like
Yeah.
a match made in heaven.
It
was. I can put music and that together and be supportive of something that I love. And it sounded like a small, tiny little job.
And it was not.
It was not. But that's another story.
We did need a new treasurer, and we were very nervous about this. And then Nina's application came in, and it was, for us too, a match made in heaven. And the only thing that happened then is that the pandemic broke out, and suddenly everything changed. And we took on some large tasks, and I would say that Nina was really the driver behind all this when it comes to the technology, changing our website, changing our database, getting everything sort of in the next millennium.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of work.
It was a huge project, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily, we had time because we were all just at home.
The timing of that was perfect.
Perfect. We just saw each other a lot on Zoom, and you get to know each other. And certainly, Nina's organizational skills are amazing. Tell us a little bit what it takes to organize a band camp. What are the great things about it? What are some of the challenges?
The great thing about it is being here with everybody this week, especially when you have the kind of weather that we've had the last 4 days, which has been spectacular. Every year, I'm so taken by the overall enthusiasm and joy that I just see on every person that's here. I mean, I just am amazed by that. And the joy at being able to make music like this.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just that for me is just a reminder of how much this impacts people's lives in a positive way.
Yes.
So I think that's the big piece that's great about it. Yeah. And it is a lot of work. There's a lot of details.
Yes.
To be worked out.
Yes.
A lot of details, both before camp and at camp.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there are. And some of those details you've never dealt with in your life. People think that this is what you've done all your life. So you know how to do this. Now, luckily, you are a very organized person, so you are capable of pulling it off. Just somebody today in band said to me, I'd love to organize a band camp in Vermont. What is involved? And so Nima can support them. We have a camp guide that shows how you can organize a camp, because it's not for everyone. On the other hand, if you have those skills, get in touch with us. We can always get you in touch with somebody who's done this so that you can understand what you're up to, because that is really important to know. Yeah. Your level of enthusiasm is felt by the people, And then they want to start doing something in turn. They also feel like they would like to give back in some way.
Yeah.
So it takes people like yourself and Diane and Linda who have, created this camp.
Yeah. The objective what Diane and I have carried on is to really enforce or reinforce that whole New Horizons philosophy, which is non-competitive, supportive, educational. Your best is good enough.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're not going to argue at this stage of our life. No, we're just going to have fun and make music.
And and try to be relaxed about it as much as possible.
Yeah. And if you like to join. I mean, then nobody will be mad at you if you don't play it.
If you don't play it.
Yeah. No, we understand. We get it. Is there anything else that you would like to say about this whole experience and where this has led you?
It's impacted me in just the way I interact with people in my life in general. Just a broader ability to be accepting of people coming from wherever they're coming from.
Yeah.
And just doing the best they can.
Yes.
And that philosophy I sort of have learned to apply to whatever context in my life I'm in.
Yes.
And try to live that. And I've got to practice that a lot.
Yes.
Working with these because I believe in it, which is why I'm here.
If there's somebody out there listening today and says, well, I'm afraid to start a music instrument or, I have an old saxophone somewhere, but I haven't got a clue how to work this. What would you tell them?
I tell them just to take the leap because I know, and in my own New Horizons group, I've encountered probably more people that have said, I want to come and try, that have not taken that leap than I have people who have taken a leap. And I've thought a lot about what is the obstacle? What are the obstacles that keep them? And sometimes it's just life circumstances just don't allow it right now. I've got other commitments or other things going on. But I think one of the big obstacles is, I don't know if I'm going to be successful. And, and that's like that word successful. What does that mean?
That's right.
And you just, all you have to do is put the instrument together and take a leap of faith that you'll be supported. Especially we have in New Horizons, that's what it's about. We'll support you and we'll help you find your way and be willing to take that risk.
Nina, thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you for
asking. And we found the perfect spot to do it. We did. Thank you so much. And keep doing what you're doing because everybody loves what you're creating.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for everything you do.
You're welcome.
I would like to thank Nina Andersen for giving the interview for this podcast. If you would like to find out more about Nina's New Horizons band, you can find that information on their website at southernmainenewhorizonsband.org. Music for this podcast by Mary Riddle, Swag On. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Music Forever. If you are interested to be interviewed for this podcast, please email us at nimapodcast@gmail.com. That is NHIMA podcast@gmail.com. See you next time.